for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll now do roll call.
Yes.
Mayor Rowe,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Miller,
Present.
Councilman Racy,
Here.
Councilman Porter,
Here.
Councilman Sanders. Is he excused?
Is there a motion to excuse him?
Was there a call made letting us know that he's not going to be here tonight? Has anyone been notified?
I have
Okay,
not.
then it should be unexcused.
We should probably vote on it, like
Yes.
we said
Okay.
last time, if someone wants to move.
I would make the motion that it be unexcused.
I'll support.
Okay. It's been moved and supported. Any discussion? All in favor? Yes.
Councilman Gabriel,
Yes.
Evening, Mayor and Council.
Good
My name
evening.
is Vern Amos. I live on Stellwagen. I'd like to know, after the last meeting, when the attorney discussed the excuse or not excuse policy of the city, can the two excused absences that were excused, I believe by you, Mayor, can those be recalled and voted on by the council now at this present time?
At the present time, no, because the issue isn't up on the agenda. But if your question is whether or not they could rescind their prior excuse of his absence,
Well, you enlightened the council that it's supposed to be a council vote whether it should be excused or not excused. And in the past, two absences of Mr. Sanders, the mayor gave him permission to be excused.
He did give us notice that he was not going to be at those two meetings.
It doesn't matter. You are the one that excused him, and it should have been by the whole council. That's why I'm wondering if it can be rescinded because it wasn't done properly.
Well, that depends. I mean,
well, I don't know if I came to the conclusion that it wasn't done properly. It was more so that the charter doesn't specify who is supposed to excuse an absence. So past practice has been the mayor excusing it. So what I suggested is that in the event we want to clarify, the policies and procedures that council had passed would be a good point to clarify how they would like to make an excused or unexcused absence. So I don't think there's anything that requires a vote of council, but if council wanted to take that practice moving forward, there would be nothing against it.
Well, I assumed after your information at the last council meeting that it was part of the charter that the council needed to vote on it, not just one person to excuse.
Yeah, the council doesn't clarify how to determine whether or not an absence is excused or unexcused. There's always going to be a deference to the action of council. So if anyone were to challenge the procedure of council, if a vote were taken, that's the strongest way to indicate the city's intent moving forward. So the majority of council is always going to be respected. So I don't necessarily think that just because council didn't excuse him prior, that it's wrong. But moving forward, if they want to vote on the matter every single time, then that for sure is going to hold up in a court of law, because they're always going to give deference to the majority of council.
So
That makes
then,
sense.
the way I understand it, what you're saying is if they decide tonight that that's the way they're gonna handle things from this date forward, that tonight's would be a precedent setting and would stand up in a court of law?
The fact that the majority of council, and in fact it was a unanimous decision, voted for the absence to be unexcused, there is a great weight given to a majority vote of council. So yes, I think that the action of council tonight would stand up in a court of law. However, they can't decide tonight whether or not they want to make that a protocol moving forward, only because it has to be an item on the agenda. So if they want to place that item on the agenda for a future council meeting to decide whether that's going to be their policy moving forward, they can do that, but it has to be noticed up to the public.
Okay.
So they haven't, by this action, they haven't said, this is our policy at every single council meeting, this is how it's going to occur. But that can be something they place on a future agenda item in order to revise their policies and procedures to say, we're gonna vote every single time on whether or not a council person's absence is excused or unexcused. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
And now, under the city charter, paragraph 7.9, does that have to be brought up by a council member, or can a citizen request that?
I think I'm gonna ask maybe that question go through the mayor, because, I'm not comfortable addressing 7.9 on the record. I think that I would like to give a legal opinion, a written legal opinion on 7.9 and the way that it impacts, a
Well, aren't
council.
you the city attorney? Can't you make that?
I am, but anytime we have a charter provision, we have to make sure that there's nothing that contradicts our charter provision. So charter can be preempted by state law. So I realize what the text of 7.9 says, and I'm very familiar with it. But with regard to the implementation of 7.9 and how that would play out, I need more time to research that in conjunction with other applicable laws before I give an opinion on how that would play
So
into
that
the
still
process
doesn't
here.
answer my question. I understand what you're saying there, but does it have to be a council member that brings 7.9 forward?
Well,
Make a motion
the-
on
the-
it,
the
or
language
can a
of seven-
citizen do so?
The language of 7.9 says the council or any person or committee authorized by it for the purpose shall have the power. So a plain reading of that would say the council or a person authorized by council. So until council has given that designation to a person or a committee that's been authorized, it would have to be council or someone that council has authorized.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Madam Mayor,
Yes,
if I could just quickly
Yes.
ask through the chair to the attorney,
yes.
can we make a motion before a roll call or during a roll call? If we don't have a quorum stated?
Without a quorum, there can be no vote.
Okay, so is this vote that we just made a valid vote?
You had a quorum,
You have a
correct?
quorum.
We have
As lo-
not gone through a
We did
roll
do it.
call.
Yes, we did.
No, we
No,
didn't
we
finish.
didn't.
Well, you mean a
Yeah.
vote? Oh,
There must be a quorum in order to take an
Take a
official
vote.
action of council.
Okay, so does that mean we have to complete roll call?
Yes.
why are we doing a roll call vote?
No, we're not. We didn't finish roll call from the
The
beginning.
attendance.
Oh, the attendance. Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Councilman Gabriel,
Present.
Councilman Sutton,
Present.
I'm sorry. I thought we had finished that.
no.
Okay. Now,
Mayor,
yes.
Mayor, may I
Yes.
ask this through the
Yes.
attorney,
Yes.
is that, when you have three absences, in my mind, it's in my mind, a pattern becomes established, and that, unfavorable attendance would basically require the council to take steps to be able to resolve the lack of attendance. Is there anything there that would be able to address that going in that kind of a procedure
So
after a third absence?
Sure. So I think as we kind of talked about a little bit, section 5.2 of the city charter talks about vacancies in office. And with regard to council and members of council, it talks about that if an officer shall miss 4 consecutive regular meetings unless they are excused by council, and the reason therefore entered in the proceedings, or 25% of the meetings, that would constitute where the position would be vacated. So, special meetings do not count for that purpose as well. So our office has looked into this matter. Under 5.2, a special meeting does not count for purposes of determining whether, because it specifically says 4 consecutive regular meetings of the council, that the position is vacated upon that occurrence, or 25% of such meetings, whether excused or unexcused. So the 4 meetings themselves, if they are excused, none of them would count. It's the 4 unexcused consecutive absences at a regularly scheduled meeting that would vacate the position. And with regard to an action council can take, as we alluded to or discussed last time, under section 7.7 of the charter, the council does have the authority to compel attendance of its members upon a vote of 3 council members at a meeting.
Question on that.
Yes,
Lord Allen, Citizen Dwayne. I want to say good evening to the mayor
Good
and those of council that decided to be with us this evening. I respectfully disagree with you, Ms. O'Leary, because I'm the one who asked that question last meeting. When you read the thing, and I caught it right away that the mayor cannot excuse on their own. It must be a vote of council. And I asked that question last week, and I'm wondering why this isn't the second time then, according to that. I got up and asked that question no quicker than you read that.
I recall you asking that question last time, and I think what I had said in the past, the precedence was for the mayor to make that determination, and council had indicated a wish moving forward.
I respectfully disagree because that thing said council, because I caught that and asked that. No quicker than that came out of your mouth, if you remember.
Right.
Madam Mayor, I asked that right away.
I remember you asking the
Yes.
question.
Okay.
Mr. Allen, I certainly do.
How is it different? How would this not be at least the second time going by what you're saying now?
How is what different? If maybe clarify that a little more for
He
me.
shouldn't have been excused last time. That
Well-
was not taken to a vote of council as it should have been.
Well, I understand your concern. If the mayor wants me to look into that issue more and provide a detailed analysis, I would certainly do that, Mr. Allen.
Well, maybe that's why we got so many problems in this city. We can't do it with part-time help.
well, if I could give a response to that. As, in the 12 years that I've been on council, whenever someone missed a meeting, the mayor would just state, Councilman Rowe called and said she is not available to attend the meeting. And there was never a vote taken. It was never written in anywhere, excused, unexcused, or anything. That's how it went, that's how we proceeded. It wasn't until last week afterwards that we read that it said the council. But we had already gone past that initial part of the meeting.
I understand it wasn't by your design, Madam Mayor.
Sure.
No, but I should have, granted, I should have been more aware.
Because I had seen the mayor do that many, many times. And it just hit me, well, how is the mayor saying that when it's supposed to be a vote of council? So, thank you.
Okay.
Mayor,
Yes,
Mayor, well, I think we need to acknowledge the fact that another councilman has been able to attend this evening's meeting.
Yes. Did you note that Councilman Sanders came in?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you. I was listening to Mr. Allen.
Okay, so your motion is,
Well, my motion, it was,
yes,
and I guess Councilman Sander is present now. That will not necessarily be necessary to.
right, okay,
So I will withdraw that motion.
okay,
Madam Mayor,
yes.
just for the record, no motion was actually made because roll call
It
wasn't
had not been done,
completed.
correct. Okay, all right, okay. All right, now we'll move on to the next item. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Is this on this,
Well,
we in- are we
that's the
citizens?
wait,
question.
we're not at citizens' comments yet.
No, I understand that.
So-
I've got a copy of the agenda,
Yes,
and she had made a statement that we can only talk about what's on the agenda.
right.
When
On
did
this-
I,
We
when
can
did I
only-
make that a statement?
We can only vote on what's on,
You can only make, there can only be, in order for there to be an official action of council, it has to be an item that's noticed on the agenda itself.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to
Okay,
determine.
yep.
So, the agenda I'm looking at simply says discussion of city council attendance. That's a wide range
well,
of things.
we haven't gotten there yet.
I will wait.
Okay.
Let's move the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. Okay. City clerk moved, yes, I'm sorry.
Madam Mayor?
Yes. What is the question on?
May I ask what part of the agenda we're on?
We're still on roll call. We finished roll call. We haven't gotten to citizens' comments yet.
No, we haven't even gotten to the
Agreed.
discussion of city council.
But you finished your roll call and you had your questions, correct?
No, we were discussing the roll call
Right,
issue.
you finished your discussions and then we put our hand up and we said.
But
we
there is
discussed.
nothing to discuss, there is nothing for you to give us information on right now because we haven't even gotten to the item on the agenda. Our discussion was over the roll call vote.
That's why I'm saying.
That is the business of the council up here. It has nothing to do at this point with the
Okay,
members
you-
of the audience.
Okay, we're not audience, but we're public.
You are,
taxpayer.
right now you are
You had a
the
roll call
audience.
and I have the question about your roll call,
Okay, what is the question on the roll call?
okay? The clerk read the roll call, minus one person.
Correct.
I didn't hear any interruption from you, the chair of the council, of the explanation of why one person was not here. There are 6 people here. That constitutes quorum. And I would like to know, and you mentioned between yourselves, well, we were notified. And by what means were you notified? That's my question. How were the people, was he notified? That's what you said, is how was he notified? So how were you notified that there's a meeting here tonight about this individual item?
No, our question was, had he notified the city clerk that he was not going to be in attendance? That was our
And
question.
did you get an answer?
The answer was no.
The answer was no.
Okay, and how did you deal with it?
We had a request then for a motion to not excuse him, but then it was brought to our attention after discussion that we hadn't even finished roll call, so the motion could not be made. So we finished our roll call, and now we're trying to move on to the next item on the agenda,
Well, I'm
which
not
is
gonna-
discussion of city council attendance.
Okay. Well, what you have stated, and I'll stay within this subject matter before your newest one, is I would like, when you call a roll call, when you say a person's absent or excused, speak into the microphone and say by what means the person was excused.
We will
Who
be.
received the call? You, the mayor, or the clerk? Those are the responsible peoples of this governing body and Mayor Pro Tem in her absence. You are the people to receive these calls. If I was a sitting member up there, I'd like to know who to call to say I can't make it here because I'm involved in a traffic accident or something, or somebody's sick. How does people, you're not employees, you're elected officials, but how do you communicate? Who do you communicate with you? I wish you get these rules together because there, an absence, it's either excused or it is saying you're absent. Okay? So, if you're absent, I've seen it twice. You've moved the meeting forward and say, oh, I did get a call from him, that the person is excused. Mr. Gabriel has called me in advance. He can't make it. Do we all agree with it? Yes, okay, and away we go with our city council meetings. Miss O'Leary, our attorney, has brought to you great items, 7.7, 7.9, 5.2 of your city charter. And I'm going to sit down and come back again, but for all those out there in La La Land, this is what an agenda looks like from the city of Wayne. If you're going to talk about attendance, why don't you put a photocopy of what the attendance rules and regulations are? Councilman Porter has been asked ever since he came on this council to say, we need to have rules and regulations and procedures. We have rules and regulations and procedures. They might be outdated, but let's put them on there and let's rectify them and for the betterment of all the citizens here. And I thank you very much, O'Leary, for your in-depth into where they stand and how they're like waves in water. You can't make a decision, Councilman Racy, because the people don't have the guts to come up and say so. They're rolling waves, okay?
Mr. Osborne, you're way off track now.
No,
Could you
I'm not
please-
off track. My
Would you
3
please
minutes
take a
is there.
seat? Would you please take a seat? Thank you.
I haven't even gotten to.
Can we move on with the agenda, please?
Discussion of
Yes,
city
Mr.
council
Blackwell.
attendance.
What is your question on? The roll call vote?
The attendance.
Nope. then
We're
let's
not
wait.
there yet.
Yeah.
We're not there.
If we could-
We're still talking about the roll call vote.
Okay, if I could just ask a question about that and refresh, I don't know what the procedure is, but once roll has been taken, and if a council member is absent at the time that roll is taken, would that council person be exempt from discussion, not picking on Mr. Sanders, but roll was taken, he came in late, so would he be exempt from partaking in the
In
procedure?
the past, if a council person came in late, it just stated in the minutes with the roll call that Mayor Rowe or Councilman Sanders arrived at in the time that they arrived at.
Okay, I didn't know if there was
Yeah.
something in the charter
There is
about that,
nothing in
to
the
bar-
charter that
to bar
mentions
that
late, no,
To bar a council member from,
no,
once the roll has been taken, like the
No.
official roll.
no.
Okay, thank you.
Will the clerk read the agenda item?
Discussion of city council attendance.
Okay, now, the reason this meeting has been called, I called the meeting because I had a lot of questions from council members and residents regarding the attendance and lack of attendance and excusing Councilman Sanders from the previous two meetings. So in lieu of that, I thought we should call this meeting so that we can actually have a vote taken by 3 members of council that would say Councilman Sanders is compelled to attend the next scheduled council meeting. That was why this was called. And if he did not come after being compelled to come, then there are other steps that we can take. The charter is very lax in what we can do when it comes to a council person's behavior, lack of attendance. This has been an issue that was brought up several years ago when I was just a council person. And it's never been rectified. Our charter is very outdated and needs a complete overdraft, and that costs a lot of money to do that. So the reason we're here is we have to pass a resolution if we wish to compel a sitting member of council to be at the next council meeting. That's why we're here tonight.
And to have further discussion,
And-
there should be
yes.
a motion on the table.
Yes, but that's why we're here tonight. So,
I would like to make a motion that we do discuss this.
Madam Mayor,
yes,
I will make the motion to compel myself to be at the next council meeting, just for the sake of opening up conversation.
Support.
okay. It's been moved by Councilman Sanders, supported by Councilman Sutton, to compel Councilman Sanders to be at the next council meeting. That would be June 6th at 8 o'clock here in City Hall. And now we'll have discussion.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I would, just for the record, as I explained to you and I explained to the clerk, not that I feel the desire or the need to have to explain myself why I was not at each one of the council meetings in the past, but I will. The first one is because the first meeting that I skipped, my brother was in the hospital with burns and smoke inhalation. And because my schedule is Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. My brothers and sisters work the opposite, the traditional Monday through Friday. I volunteered to take the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday schedule to be at the hospital with my brother because he was in ICU for quite a few days. The mayor knows that, and I asked to be excused. The second time is because on the Monday I was at church I had left church and I've been having an issue with my groin area, sharp pain. I went to the emergency room. From the emergency room, I was there from 11 o'clock in the morning, after 11:15ish, till 6:30 the next morning, not the emergency room, but the triage area. And on Tuesday at 8:15, I had a CT scan done out in Troy. So that is the reason why I wasn't at that meeting. I don't feel compelled to have to explain myself at each time why I'm not, and make public why I'm not at meetings. Because that's quite frankly, no one's business.
And we had those reasons.
I understand, but, you know, the viciousness of people, led by people, that's the reason why.
Okay. Okay. Any other discussion or questions?
But but seeing as that I made the precedents, so when we compel people to attend meetings or we're going to have an excuse, I want that same excuse made. I want everybody to make clear in public why they're not attending. We're getting in a dangerous precedence here, and it's amazing to me that all of a sudden, when there are certain people that don't agree with certain members, there's an agenda and there's people leading other people. But now there's no agenda here when people are compelling me to attend a meeting because I have personal reasons I can't attend. So remember that when we pass a motion or something to make sure that, remember, it's all going to be all inclusive. It's not just me that's going to have to abide by this. It's
Right.
everyone up here.
Well, as the charter states, it should be a vote of council that excuses a member, and it has to be stated the reason why the person is being excused.
I absolutely agree. And because
Now on, we will follow that to the letter of the charter.
and we should follow every other letter of the charter as well.
Okay,
Not when it just so fits us
Right.
to do so.
yep,
Okay.
Mayor Earl,
yes,
may I ask through the chair?
Yes.
The attorney is, can you kind of give us a little detail explaining what the process of compelling a public official?
The process to
What's-
compel would be the vote of three.
Okay.
Are you talking about what are the
Well,
implications?
What does that pertain to precisely? Is that a letter? Is that police officer showing up at the house? Or what are we talking about here?
It would be the vote of three members, and then a notice must be given, obviously, in some shape or fashion to the council person that you're compelling to attend. It doesn't say what type of notice must be given. However, given the fact that it does constitute misconduct in office to not appear once you've been compelled to attend, we want to make sure that the type of notice is adequate enough to apprise the council person of the fact that that decision was made. So, personal service at their address would be the best way to ensure that that particular council person was made aware of the fact that they've been compelled to attend.
Could you then continue to elaborate on, after that process has been taken, the individual does not attend, what is the next step?
So according to charter, it says someone who fails to attend, a council person who fails to attend after being compelled to do so shall be, it shall constitute misconduct in office. So at the next meeting where that person did not attend, there would need to be a finding made by council that the person is not in attendance and vote on the issue of the misconduct.
Okay. That's a gray area in my mind is, how do you clarify what is considered misconduct, other than the fact of not showing up to a meeting, unexcused, three meetings?
No,
Or anything?
But-
Is there a criteria there for that?
Madam Mayor, if I might say,
Please.
from what I understanding,
please, the
I'm
attorney
gonna
has the
ask her.
floor. The attorney has the floor right now.
So our charter specifically states that misconduct is the failure to appear after being compelled to attend.
Okay.
It does not say that 4 unexcused consecutive absences constitute misconduct. Instead, it says the position is vacated upon that occurrence.
Okay. And then, upon that, what would that be the next step?
After the misconduct?
And person did not show up, what, do we send a letter to the governor? Or what goes on after that?
The governor does have the authority to remove a council person. I can go through the statute. Misconduct in office should be one of those reasons. However, that's at the discretion of the governor, so it's not a requirement that the governor remove someone for misconduct. It says the governor may.
Is that the
That's an
only-
option after misconduct.
I'm sorry, is that the only step that we can take as a body regarding how to address misconduct?
If you're asking whether or not you can remove a council person,
I was not.
okay.
I was just asking, there is no other option other than to submit a letter to the governor requesting intervention
In order to achieve what?
to achieve in filling that vacant spot? Is that
Miss-
part of the process?
Well, I think we need to clearly delineate, misconduct does not automatically constitute a vacancy. Missing 4 unexcused consecutive regularly scheduled meetings would constitute a vacancy. Misconduct is a reason the governor may remove a council person should he or she so choose. It's not automatic. So it doesn't, just because someone's guilty of misconduct doesn't mean they would automatically forfeit their office, if that's what you're asking.
So then, my understanding is that it would be up to the governor's discretion of action, and it's possible that they may come back and suggest that that seat would remain inactive until that term is up, or that the people decide to make a recall. Is that my understanding?
The governor has the ability to conduct an investigation. There's certain requirements under the statute that I'd be happy to brief for council if they'd like. That's an option of the governor. And there must be a hearing and notice given to the elected official, an opportunity to be heard by the elected official. So there's a process, a due process type hearing that must occur by the governor in the event that the governor chooses to intervene. I've seen many instances of misconduct, as I think we all have, where the governor has not intervened. So there's no guarantee with regard to the governor's action. But I'd be happy to brief that statute more if council would like. I don't think it would take that much
It's not necessary
time.
at this time. I appreciate you just trying to open up our understanding of what the process is that we may need to have to consider if necessary. You know, I'm good for right now on that.
Anybody else?
Madam Mayor, thank you.
Councilman Porter?
I have to disagree with Councilman Sanders. No one up here demanded he say anything about what was wrong with him. I have no problem. Every meeting that I miss, you can tell them what is wrong. But I'm a little disturbed by his saying that it was going to be, everybody has to do this. Nobody demanded, nobody suggested even that he say what was wrong with him.
Madam Mayor, if I might respond, the
Yes.
fact of the matter is, I think it was you that said that before a vote to excuse, state the reason for.
Yes, it has.
And so
it says-
therefore, it
does
says state the reason for.
Yes.
And so therefore, I don't feel the need to have to under federal protection, to tell people why I'm not missing, for health reasons or other reasons, why I'm missing a meeting.
Now, I would think that it stipulates, let's see,
Yes, it does.
it stipulates there is a reason, but I would feel that just stating because of a health matter would be sufficient. I don't think we have to go into details about what the health matter is.
Fair enough.
That's.
And I would agree with that. I
that's
think there are
my-
other issues. Should a person choose to disclose it on
Right.
their own, that's certainly their own
Right,
prerogative,
right.
and they're able to consent to releasing that information.
Fair enough.
But for HIPAA concerns and other concerns, I think it would be sufficient to say that I was in the hospital for a health reason. I was in the hospital due to my brother's illness, without revealing the exact nature of the condition or the injury itself, because I do
Right.
think that could reveal some intimate or personal details that a person might not feel comfortable disclosing, depending on what that health issue is.
Yes,
Madam Mayor, on that, if I may ask,
yes.
if we're gonna end up going that technical on it, if we as a council decide to vote, whether an absence is excused or unexcused, what would constitute a valid reason to avoid any personal attacks against any other council member between councilmen? Because at the end of the day, even if it is a personal reason or a health reason, with a vote of council, the council can vote against the reason given,
Yes.
which wouldn't be the right thing to do, but in theory could be done per the charter.
Right.
So how are we gonna distinguish between what is excusable and what is not excusable?
That's totally up to the council, I would
I think
assume.
it has to be on a case-by-case
Case
basis.
basis, yeah.
I don't
If
think
you're-
there's really a way to
Interesting.
say,
Yeah.
these are the excuses we will accept, and these are the ones we won't accept ahead of time. I think the nature of the circumstances is gonna be up to council on each individual occasion.
So therefore, if we had, say, these list of things, 5 different things, it would require council to vote excused if it fell into one of those categories.
Right, what you're doing is you're creating an exclusive list, and I think it has to be almost a non-exhaustive list. So, you know, is it, if they got into an accident on the way here, if they got pulled over, if their mom's in the hospital, if their brother's in the hospital, if they're in the hospital, if their dog got hit by a car, if their flight was delayed coming back from Florida. I just think that the number of excuses that could be presented to council is so large and varying that it would be impossible to predict ahead of time which would be an excusable versus an unexcusable absence, if that makes sense.
Correct. So with that being said, how would council protect itself from different parties targeting different people in the event of a true excused absence?
The wish of council just needs to be expressed by a majority. I mean, a majority of council is going to decide the day on any given occasion.
Okay, so if, say for instance, God forbid, I was driving here, got into an accident, and wasn't able to make anybody aware, therefore I would be unexcused. With that coming to light, would that excused absence be reversed?
If the council should choose to address the issue at the next meeting, the minutes, in the adoption of the minutes, they could amend the minutes to reflect an excused absence if they receive information after the fact from you that was a proper, excuse for not attending the meeting.
Okay. And then with that, if I were to get into an accident and I was able to communicate that to any person on council, do we have to go to a designated person? I guess I should ask first, or is it any person on council? And with that, would it justify an excused absence in the eyes of the charter, if you will? However, if it is excused in the eyes of the charter and the council members decide to vote against it, where do we stand on that point and legality reasons?
Well, the charter does not define what's excused and unexcused. So when you say in the eyes of the charter, if it constitutes excused, the only way that it's going to constitute excused in the eyes of the charter if a majority vote of council chooses to make it excused. So there's no delineation given by charter on what would constitute excused or unexcused.
Okay. Would there be any kind of legal action if one council member was excused for personal reasons and then another council member who gave a reason of personal reasons unexcused? Would that cause legal action against the council for discrimination?
I think there can always be legal action. Anytime an action of council occurs, there's a possibility of legal action. So, it's probably not the answer you're looking for, but anytime council makes a vote, if someone feels like they've been discriminated against, they can file a suit. Whether or not that suit has merit is certainly a different story, but it's going to cost the city money to defend a suit like that.
Miro?
Yes.
Okay.
Are you finished, Councilman Grant?
For now, thank you.
Okay, here's a couple things here, all right? First of all, in my mind, 3 absences is a pattern, for whatever reason, okay? My thing is, if I was running a business as we are running the city, we need all hands on deck, we need to be present, okay? There's where we have to respond to that, okay? I have to act on that, okay? I don't have an option there, okay? I have responsibilities as well. 2, really, a lot of these things that they are vague in our charter of being able to get clarification of the questions that you had, okay? There's all kinds of things that are just completely blank. But I think that's where I come to is about the ethic policy. We have an ethics policy, yes, but even that is vague. But we do have, I believe, an opportunity to be able to clear up these misunderstandings of know what your responsibilities are and what you do. With a stronger ethic policy, it can and should address attendance and be more defining without having to go in and spending money with the charter. I think we can get around by doing that. That way, you know, we got a good understanding what our responsibilities of what our jobs are here in the city. And I think that would take away, that could help resolve a lot of things in many different ways that can alleviate some of the discord, for lack of a better word, amongst the council and misunderstanding. And I encourage the council to consider this. We've been talking about this on and off now for the past year. And and unfortunately, we can debate this back and forth all night long. The fact is, we just don't have any literature that we can go to say, this is what we can do and this is what we can't do. And this is how we can't move forward and this is what we can move forward with. You know, I mean, and that's why I'm encouraging everyone here to reconsider that, to look at that.
Mayor Pro Tem Miller, in that regards, I have to disagree with you. All of us up here attended the newly elected officials academy training program. You all received a handbook. I don't know if any of you read it, but in that handbook, it tells you what your roles and responsibility are as a council member, as an elected official. Certainly, cities adopt their own, but if anybody read that, they know that they're supposed to attend the meetings. That's number one. That's the number one thing. So, I mean, like I said, you either have ethics, you don't, you know right from wrong, or you don't, or I don't know. But anyways, can we please, any further discussion on this?
I got a
Yes.
question. Mayor, this question's for you.
Yes.
You had mentioned that you've been trying to have a meeting with Councilman Sanders
Yes.
since for the last couple meetings, and he texted you a message. Could you make us aware of the message that he texted you and not wanting to meet with you?
Do I,
If you're allowed to reveal a communication between yourself and another council person, if you'd like to generally provide the nature of the message.
okay. This was a text message that had started back on May the 3rd, and I had been trying to get a hold of Councilman Sanders because of some issues that had been going on between himself, myself, Mayor Pro Tem Miller, and the city attorney. And he told me that he was tired of my harassment and that he was unable to meet with me until after his election at work, and that would be over with on Saturday, and that I had contacted a friend of his brother, and God knows whoever else is beyond my understanding. You certainly did not express this much urgency with regards to my own concerns. I am certain it can wait. Please don't contact me again until my election is over. So I waited. The election happened on May the 5th and 6th, I believe. I then, on Monday, May 8th, I said, it is over, now we need to meet. May 9th, Chris, we need to meet to discuss those text messages. On May 10th, Chris, your election is over and your text message matter cannot be just swept under the rug. On Monday, May 15th, I said, Councilman Sanders, will you be at the council meeting tomorrow, meaning the meeting on the 16th? If so, then it is imperative that I meet with you before the council meeting. Thank you. I then received a text back from Councilman Sanders that said, Mayor, I spent the entire day at the hospital yesterday because of a mass in my intestines. I was there from 11 until 6:30 this morning, and I am exhausted. Not sure if I'll be present. If you need the phone number of the doctor to prove my claims, I will. However, as for speaking to you, that will never happen. I don't take kindly to you speaking to friends and family alike, suggesting I need help, also suggesting that I might be suicidal, that somehow because my facts don't fit with your truth, that somehow I am dangerous. I will have you know that it will continue to, if you continue to spread untruths about me privately or publicly, such as that I threatened the city manager or that I acted erratically in a public place, I will litigate you in court. It is unfortunate that you can't see through the melee and understand what's really going on. You have now proven to me you can't be trusted. All of this lays squarely at your feet. You are on notice. Do not contact me again. So I did not contact Councilman Sanders at all since that message.
That's disturbing.
Please, hey, please, please.
I have a problem if. Let's see if this is working. I'm concerned of the communication between the mayor and a council person if we can't have communication. That's alarming to me. I'm not exactly sure what's going on. I just like to get some resolution to whatever is happening here. I think it's very frustrated as a council person. I'm embarrassed as a citizen of the city that this kind of stuff is going on, whatever it is. Even this meeting tonight is embarrassing, that we even have to be here and wasting our time. I'm supposed to be somewhere else right now, and I've been called to be at a meeting about attendance. Very frustrated, and I'd like to see some resolution to whatever needs to be done. Do we need to invoke Section 7.9 to have an investigation about what's going on? What does the city attorney recommend to the chair? How can we just get this past us so that we can deal with the real problems in our city? I think it's sad that one person becomes a focus when we have a negative budget. We have all these things going on in our city. We've got some real problems that we need to deal with, and we're having these conversations, which is extremely disheartening.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I will reserve my right to respond to that at an appropriate time because that's not what this meeting is about. But I will respond to all of that at the next meeting, and I encourage everyone to attend.
Through the chair, I just asked a question. I don't even know why he's speaking.
Okay.
I'm asking a question from Brita.
You were asking a question to Madam Mayor. He was asking
Yes.
a question to Brita by typical racy-esque kind of thing by slamming all the time. And it's just true. And you allow it to happen.
Gentlemen, please, can we
Mayor,
just get on with this?
Mayor, yes, we can. But I'm just telling you, the melee that, and call it me if you want. Step down, Chris, if you want. That's fine. But you know what? I'm going to tell you something. All that is done in the dark will come to the light. And I'm going to tell you this.
Please, members of the audience.
Is that for the suggestion that I don't even know what's going on, is that he's at the very center of it all. He knows exactly what's going on. And you know what? You know exactly what's going on as well, Mayor, because I'm going to tell you what. Residents have told you. How do people in the residence know? How do people in the residence know? Because people post it on their personal Facebook page.
I don't.
No?
I don't.
But I know. You don't have, but you know who does. You know who does. And don't tell me you haven't been told by residents who posts situations and leaks things that comes out of City Hall on their personal Facebook page.
And then-
You know for a fact, and I'm not going to.
No, I have no facts on that. I
course,
have
no
no
facts.
facts on that.
You've been made aware of the facts on that.
I have
You
not
chose
been
to be.
shown anything.
You have chosen.
I have not
You
been
have
shown
you have been
anything,
you have
Councilman
chose
Sanders.
you choose to, under the guise of don't ask, don't tell. You've chose to remain in the dark regarding that. You chose to remain dark.
Okay, Councilman Sanders. We have a motion on the floor. What is the wish of council?
I asked a question, and it was interrupted.
The
This is about
attorney had
attendance.
7.9.
And I asked about the 7.9, and
Investigation.
just the question, if you just read what he's saying to do, and you can't get any response, what do we do as a council?
Okay.
We need some answers.
Could the city attorney then give us a,
We have a motion first.
yes,
No.
we do. We have a motion, but his question
My
has not
question
been
happened
answered
before, during the conversation.
during the discussion on this. So on
Mayor, if you would like
investigation
me to provide
7.9.
him, I think with the gravity of 7.9.
Yes.
It's a question that needs to be properly briefed
Right.
and addressed in a memo. So if through the chair, the mayor is asking me for a legal opinion on the authority provided by 7.9, I'd be happy to provide it by the
Please
next
do.
council meeting.
Please do. Okay.
Could you explain what the motion is?
It is to compel Councilman Sanders to be at the June 6th council meeting.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, that is the motion.
Okay, are you still taking questions out here, or are you gonna, once you rule on it up there, is this discussion over with? Does it move into, it's been moved and supported. We've been having discussion. Is there any more discussion here at the council table?
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Can you remind me who moved and supported?
Oh, yes.
I moved it.
Councilman Sanders did,
I'm
and
gonna clarify, Mayor. I
Terry
don't-
Sutton supported.
without looking into this matter, I don't feel comfortable proceeding with Councilman Sanders moving on a motion to compel his own attendance. So, and I don't know, to be frank with you, I don't know whether that's right or wrong right now. But to err on the side of caution, it's my understanding he moved for the purpose of discussion, to be able to discuss the matter. But in light of the fact that it's compelling his own attendance, perhaps we should have a different motion maker.
I will withdraw my motion.
Okay. Does support withdraw?
I will make
Okay.
that motion, and someone else has to.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Miller, could you speak into the microphone?
Well, then I'll go ahead and take that motion to ask that you be compelled to attend the next regularly scheduled meeting on June 6th,
Yes.
please.
Support.
Okay, it's been moved by Mayor Pro Tem Miller and supported, excuse me, by Councilman Sutton. Any further discussion from council? Is there any further discussion from council? No? Okay, yes, okay. Mr. Roberts. Mr. Roberts, we're
Let
still.
us. Jesus.
Mr. Osborne, could you please just follow what we're doing? I'm watching you. I know you are. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm happy to know I'm being watched. Yes, Mr. Roberts, how are you?
I thought we were doing the roll
thank you,
call.
Ms.
No,
Madam Mayor.
no. not yet.
So this discussion, pull this out, make sure I'm not gonna be off base now. Discussion of city council attendance. Yes, I will. Thank you. So I have a couple of questions, and one of the first ones pops up from what Ms. O'Leary said. She said that if a councilman is compelled to appear and he fails to appear, it's considered misconduct. Correct.
That's correct.
And did I also understand you to say that once it is misconduct, that this council can remove a person for misconduct? Did I?
No,
What
the
was?
council does not have authority to remove for misconduct. The council has no authority to remove a sitting officer. That authority would come from the governor or by a recall.
So what's the purpose of coming up with the ruling of misconduct then?
The misconduct would, I think, constitute sort of a public censure in the fact that you're notifying the electorate that he's been found guilty of misconduct. And without having the state statute in front of me, I wish I'd brought it. I looked into it prior to the last meeting. I believe, I'm most confident that misconduct would also constitute a reason where the governor is permitted to remove a person, should he choose to act. In other words, there's a state statute where the governor is able to remove an elected official. The state statute defines a list of various situations in which he has the authority to remove someone, and I'm fairly certain misconduct is one of them. It's not required by the governor, but he's permitted to.
Okay, so then what misconduct would also entail basically anything, A, going against the charter, B, not upholding the swearing-in ceremony, not doing as you swore you would do, which is withhold the Constitution, the charter, protect the laws, blah, blah, blah. Is that that's misconduct, basically. Anything you do that doesn't uphold our charter, or it goes against it, or breaks a law, that's misconduct, clearly.
I wouldn't be comfortable giving that opinion
Okay.
today.
All right, so then this.
But I would be comfortable saying that pursuant to the charter, this would constitute misconduct.
Okay.
Failure to appear.
So then we got, this other question has come up. If you miss 4 consecutive meetings or 25%. Now, the question I have about this is the 25%.
I know your question before you ask it, Mr. Roberts. You're going to ask me whether that's in any given calendar year, in their term. How do you calculate the 25%?
Well, yes. And the question I have is let's say a person has a 4-year term. So that's 48 months, 96 meetings. But let's say we're 12 months into it, and that person has already missed 25%. Or let's say 18 months into it, a year and a half, and they have already missed 25% of the meetings. Now, clearly, my understanding is that if they've missed 25%, that can only count as the meetings that have been held. I don't see how you can say there's 96 meetings, but we got 3.5 years or 2.5 years left. So clearly, it can't be 25% of the total 96 it would be. It could only be 25% of the meetings that have been held. Am I correct or incorrect?
I wouldn't feel comfortable giving that opinion on the spot.
Can you tell me what your answer was to the question I had? Because you said, I think you thought this was the question, but I don't think
Well-
I was going to come at you from this angle.
Well, in reviewing the charter between the last meeting and now, I noticed that language and the ambiguity in it, knowing that 5.2 is going to be the subject of discussion. However, in light of the fact that I work at the direction of the mayor through council, I don't go incurring fees on behalf of the city without being directed to do so. So until the mayor and council ask me to do that, I'm not going to do the necessary research and incur the cost.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
could I ask the council through the mayor, if the city council could get this question answered on the taxpayer's dime, if so be? This is something very important I'd like to know. Thank you.
For those in the audience, section 5.2, it starts off with, any city office shall be declared vacant by the council upon the occurrence of any of the following events before the expiration of the term of such office. And then it lists eight different items that could be called, and one of them is missing 4 meetings or 25% of such meetings. So it starts off, it says term of office, so, but we can have the city attorney investigate that as well as the 7.9.
So is my question understood by everybody? I mean,
Yes.
okay, thanks.
Yes, Mr. Allen?
I believe we're kind of missing something here. We keep talking about Councilman Sanders not being here. I've
That's
noticed
anybody.
another chair that's been vacant too many times, okay? But I want to add to this, too, that I find it absolutely amazing that while a councilman is out tending to his sick brother and getting medical attention for himself and can't spare 1 hour to be here and fulfill his obligation, but he did find time to go embarrass this city and every citizen in it by getting himself kicked out of a public place for acting like a jerk. I called last meeting. I called for him to step down, and I'm still calling for him to step down. You've embarrassed us enough.
Any other comments or questions from the audience? No? Will the clerk call the roll? Oh, do you have a question, Mr. Port? Oh,
I didn't know if he did.
Madam Mayor, for the roll
Yes.
call, can we have a clarification of the motion, please?
could the clerk read the motion, please?
The motion would be to compel Sanders to attend the next meeting.
Councilman Sanders.
Councilman Sanders.
Madam Mayor, do I abstain or what?
I don't think there's any harm in the vote. Worst case scenario, if someone were to challenge his vote, his vote would just be not counted. So as long as there's a majority without his vote, then we should be fine. That's why I wanted him to not be the maker of the
Okay.
motion.
Okay,
Mayor Rowe,
yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Miller,
Yes.
Councilman Racy,
No.
Councilman Porter,
Yes.
Councilman Sanders,
Yes.
Councilman Gabriel,
Yes.
Councilman Sutton,
Yes.
6 yes, 1 no.
Okay. Okay. All right, we now move to citizens' comments or requests on items not on the agenda. Are there any comments? I have one. Yes. You could give us your name and address, please?
Madam Mayor, members of the council, my name is Dan Hammond. I live at 37660 Hillcrest Drive. I just wanted to correct, and I have the highest regard for him, Brian Kamler. At the last meeting, I was out of town, but I watched it online. And he was talking about water rates, and Mr. Blackwell asked a question about the flat rate that we pay for water and sewer. And I believe he misspoke when he was describing it as the money you need to operate your system. That is simply not true. Under DWSD, and then it's continued under GLWA, the city of Detroit a number of years ago proposed recovering their fixed costs with a flat rate assigned to each city based on their volumes they requested in the master contract, which everybody was renewing about 6 or 7 years ago. And you voted on them at one point, the council at that time did. The fixed rate, they originally wanted it to be 100% recovery of their fixed costs. And their fixed costs are comprised primarily of debt that they incurred selling bonds to build out the system and build water treatment plants. They did it at 25% the first year, 40%, and then stopped at 70%. They wanted to go to 100%. Members of the TAC, which is comprised of all the customer cities, convinced them to stop at 70 for their fixed cost recovery. So what they did was, based on, it's a system that's designed to produce 2 billion gallons of water a day. Lately, it sells about 1 billion, so it operates at 50% of its capacity. But their costs are based on a 2 billion gallon a day system. So they have costs, like I said, most of it is debt. Some of it is pension obligations and healthcare, retiree healthcare obligations, and electricity costs for pumping water, raw water from Lake Huron and the Detroit River to be cleaned and sanitized and distributed in the transmission system. So they assigned, based on your stated volumes in your contract, a percent of the volume of their fixed costs. They attribute it to each individual customer city. And then, like originally, ours was about $97,000 a year, or a month, excuse me, per month, based on our projected volumes. And at the time, the administration decided to just divide it up amongst all of the accounts equally. A few years ago, under David Murphy as city manager, I convinced him that that was not the way to do it because it's a demand kind of thing. And some customers, Ford Motor Company, for example, has multiple taps that range from 6 inches to 12 inches. And their demand can go up and down at a moment's notice. And this is really what drives the price of water, is demand. And so working with Brian, we came up with rates for the fixed costs that reflected the size of the tap, so that a little old lady, and most residents have a 3/4 inch tap, they didn't have to pay the same amount of the fixed rate as Ford Motor Company, for example. So they switched to that a few years ago. like as I said, it was under David Murphy. And that fee is, your city is billed every month, like it's probably over 100,000 something now. And it is divided up based on that formula, based on tap size across all the accounts. And that money, so when Mr. Blackwell said, Wendy said, it goes directly to the city of Detroit. That is absolutely true. That money is recovered from all the customers, goes directly to the city of Detroit. The money to operate the city of Wayne system comes from a percentage added on to the commodity costs of the water that's purchased from Detroit, because you pay the flat rate and a commodity cost. And that's where you build in your money that you obtain to operate the city of Wayne system. So he was, like I said, I have the highest regard for him, but he misspoke in that. And the way they formulate rates in Detroit and now GLWA is a very complex thing. But I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hammond. Anybody else? Yes, Mr. Blackwell.
Mayor, council, I was made a
Just your name and address, please.
well, under the Michigan Open Meetings Act, I don't really have to give my address. I don't.
At
feel-
least your street.
Okay, Haroon, everybody knows. I made an error at the last council meeting. I did it on a mistake. I forgot to mention Councilman Racy was also a member of the Wayne Neighborhood Watch Patrol. So, Mr. Racy, I apologize for omitting you. Just, I get up here on a soapbox and forgot. And I just had a question to the chair. Maybe Ms. Nassarini can answer. With the DTE upgrades, are those going to be just the main roads in the city, like Howe, Benoit, or is it coming into the neighborhoods?
It's covering the city.
Okay,
entire
so
city, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, I've noticed some on Howe Road, and I didn't.
That was a prior project
Okay.
that was approved a year ago. That was their test, basically. And so I think those were installed last year, if I'm not mistaken. And so that's separate from this project.
Well, I seen when I go out on patrol, I noticed there's a gentleman on the corner of my street and how it's got I don't know, a big floodlight, and I found out that through DTE, if there's a pole on your property, you pay like, I think a fee of like $15 a month to have that. I was like, oh wow, this is really good. It really lights up that corner. So I know about that, but I didn't know. I had other residents ask me, hey, are we getting the new LED lights in the neighborhood? So I went to, as I talked with Ms. Brogue today when I called to find out about this meeting, because I had a neighbor stop by to tell me. But I just wanted to clarify that if those LED lights are coming into the neighborhoods,
Specifically where the high-pressure sodium lights are, because those are the ones that are costing the city the most money, and those are the ones that are outdated. So those are going to take precedence. Those would be the highest cost savings. So I have a map I can email to you, Mark, if you'd like it.
thank you. And
Yeah,
I also
sure.
want to make mention too, just an honorable mention to, I contacted, just to let you know that we only have one ordinance officer in the city of Wayne, Brandon Braun. Called him today. He was Johnny on the spot, came right out because there was some people moving out of the house across the street, left quite a bit of items there, and he had showed me. He's like, I got a busy day. And I said, well, I appreciate you coming out last minute. He had like, on average, I think it was like 60 stops or something. I mean, the guy is working his tail off. And also, I had seen a mention about John Conyer, employee who returned a wallet, and so that's that's part of the people in our seal. Just this is our community, and it's good to see. The Wayne resident was happy to recover his wallet because it had all of his personal information in it. So thank you, Mayor, Council, and City Manager.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Blackwell. Anyone else? Yes.
Yeah, Chris Miller, Richard. Chris, you're a disgrace to that seat. You're an embarrassment to the city. And you sit up there and act like a victim? If you brought it on yourself, I'll do the city a favor and step down.
Anyone else? Okay. Motion to adjourn?
Second.
It's been moved by Councilman Racy, supported by Mayor Pro Tem Miller to adjourn. It's 20 minutes to 8. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Okay, we'll start roll call. Mayor Rowe?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Miller?
Present.
City,
Present.
Councilman Racy?
Here.
Councilman Porter?
Here.
Councilman Sanders?
Present.
Councilman Gabriel?
Present.
Councilman Sutton?
Present.
We do have a quorum.
Thank you.
Welcome. Okay, I gotta do double duty tonight, I'm sorry. Gotta play Vanna.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to come speak with you again. Like we mentioned last week, we've completed the rate model that was commissioned last fall. And from that model came the numbers that were included in Fund 592 in the budget that you adopted last week. So we've prepared two documents for you. One is this very pretty multicolored arithmetic of water and sewer rates. And Katie's going to cover 2/3 of that. And then we also have the written report that accompanies the model itself. So this is not the model. The model is an Excel file that we will turn over to the city. And it will be the city's to update as it sees fit going forward. What the letter is, and it's still in draft, and I do that for a reason. This should be a living document, just as the model is a living document. So as soon as we say at this point in time, we're going to go final with this and take away the draft and take away the date and we'll put the right date in, as soon as we do that, this becomes static and it becomes less useful. So the idea is that we have this document that is fluid and will change with the model as the city knows the most recent facts or as assumptions change. So after Katie goes through the pretty one, I will go through the letter and point out some of the assumptions that we included in the model.
Okay. In the methodology, in the top row, we have the water and sewer purchase that goes into the total cost. The capital outlay would be equipment purchases and projects. The debt service is the principal and interest on existing debt. And then admin is our operating and admin expenses. So all of that is pulled together And then we subtract out any miscellaneous revenue and flat fees, which equals the total costs that will be recovered through the variable rate. Divide that by the total units that we expect to sell, and then that will come to the variable rate that the customers will pay.
Now, if we calculate rates over 1 year, like we have previously, that's where you stop. It's basic algebra, really. You're just solving for X, X being the commodity rate that you end up charging. But what the model does is it takes that 1 year calculation, what I refer to as the two-dimensional. It's just, we need cash coming in for our bills, cash coming out. It's just really like this. Whereas when you put it in the model and you go over 5 years and you have a target in mind for how much money we're going to have at the end of the model, you're still worried about the ins and the outs this year, but at the same time you're going this way and spreading the rate increases over several years with a long-term focus in mind. We're not worried about making money or breaking even this year. We're worried about covering our costs over the 5 years of the model, which includes the year that we're in right now. But over that time, we're going to cover our costs and put enough money in the bank to fill 3 buckets. Those 3 buckets are defined at the bottom of this page, or they're at least titled. So there's 4 there, but the 4th you don't have. The first being 90 days of operations. So we literally just take your operating costs, divide by 365 days times 90, and you should have that much in the bank because you bill every 2 months, but you pay your customer or you pay your vendors quicker than that. So we want to have enough money in the bank to pay our bills without worrying that we're going to get enough this particular month from our customers coming in. So because you're on a bi-monthly cycle, we round up an extra month. If you build every month, I'd say put 60 days in. If you build quarterly, I'd say put 120 days in. Then annual debt service when appropriate, if you have debt service, and you do. So 1 year's worth of debt service is going to be accumulated this year so that we can make the payment next year. And as soon as we make a payment, we have to fill the bucket back up. So come the end of the year, we want to have 1 year's worth of debt service payments in our pocket. The third one's called emergency capital replacement. And I also refer to that as the oops, something broke fund. We're not talking about major capital replacement. We're not talking about, digging up Michigan Ave and putting down another mile of pipe. It's, oh no, we had a water main break. Oh no, we got to prevent the sinkhole from happening. Oh no, something just happened. That calculation is either 2 to 5%, somewhere in that range. That's the recommended percentage of your net book value of capital assets. And so we've selected 2% because you do have significant capital outlay, and it would be a different issue if you had your own water plant or had your own sewer plant, in which case I would say go up to the 5%. But when you're just a wholesale buyer and seller of water, 2% is fine according to the industry. So that fourth, the planned capital replacement when appropriate, we did not include such a bucket. Reason being, it would require an additional increase of the rates in order to fill that bucket for an eventual mile of new pipe or eventual replacements. And given that just a couple years ago, the city had to do that, if you remember, a 19% jump start plus the additional annual raises on top of that, unless we were told otherwise or directed otherwise by council, we feel it's fine, and most cities do, to just stop after the first 3 buckets. If you're going to have significant capital replacement that's planned, you're either going to get funding through issuing your own bonds or going through the state for an SRF or DWRF program, which is financing it over 10, 20, 30 years. So if there is a need to do that level of capital, then you're going to have a discussion about how are we going to finance it. So with that, we'll go to the letter. So the title page, there's a table of contents. There is a letter from Plant Moran that just explains what the model is. And it's basically just a calculation from assumptions that we get from the city. So those assumptions are summarized on the next several pages. I won't go through all of them in the interest of time. I'll go through the most interesting ones. So the fourth one down on page 2 is capital outlay. So what are we planning on doing to our system? Well, the city we met with Mike Byton and Ed Queen and went back and forth a couple times on what kind of capital replacement the city was going to do, what kind of large equipment was necessary to be purchased in the next 5 years, or 5 years including the model, and bake that in. And so the idea is that our rates are going to be such that over 5 years, we're going to have enough capital coming in that we're going to buy these things with cash or pay for these things with cash. Same way you did with replacing the water meters. You had the cash here, you just made the payment, you're not financing and pushing it down the road. So the big items, I mentioned the water meters is number one. There are 2 dump trucks factored in 2018. So at some point in the past, instead of buying 1 truck every couple years and then kind of a laddering effect, 2 were bought at the same time. Well, that means that 2 need to be bought again because they are pretty well worn out. So going forward past this model, I would suggest starting that laddering. But right now, both dump trucks are in major disrepair, are on their last legs, and would need to be replaced. Then there's a series of lining of the sanitary sewers in various years, replacement of various water mains throughout the city. Going forward for 2018 to 2021, water has $2.3 million of capital planned, and sewer has $1.5 million. So in order to keep your system as watertight as possible, the opinion of Mike and Ed is that this stuff needs to be done, and they would know better than anyone. I think I was here a couple of months ago where Ed was showing the televising of certain pipes, and you see
Right.
sections that have fallen out. So proof is definitely in the video there. The bottom bullet on page 2 discusses the readiness to serve charge. And I was in the hallway for the last meeting, and I heard Mr. Hammond speak, and we spoke out in the hallway afterwards. So he's right on a lot of things that he said. He certainly knows the history of the city's water department better than I do. But the fixed charge that you're charging now, I can't speak to more than 3 years ago. I've only helped with your rates the last 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
But the rate now is meant to cover just your internal costs. Administration, the cost of reading the meters, issuing a bill, collecting the money, all that. That's what it is meant to cover. So you do get a fixed monthly bill from DWSD plus a commodity-driven calculation. However, you don't care, or a city that buys water from GLEWA, a city that does that, does not care what Detroit's costs are or GLEWA's costs are. You buy water, and then you turn around and you sell water. And so just because they choose to bill you in a fixed and variable capacity doesn't mean that's really a fixed cost for the city of Wayne. So the commodity rate that you charge is meant to cover that water coming from GLEWA and the capital and the debt service. We do a calculation, we've done it every year to make sure that we're not charging more through your fixed fee to your customers. That number is going to be equal to or less than your internal costs. That's the way it's set up, and that's the way it's intended to be. So GLEWA can do whatever they want to do. We estimate what we're going to pay them, and there's a bullet coming up on that. But the method by which they choose to bill us, we as a city should not care one way or the other. We just want to make sure that we have enough cash coming in to operate our end of the system and serve our customers. Hope that makes sense. On the next page, the first bullet at the top talks about debt service, and there is no additional debt service built into the model over and above what you are already committed to. So any of those capital projects you might have to finance in the future are not in here. If you choose to finance something going forward, that would need to be added in, and that would be an additional cost. Unless otherwise noted, related to operating and admin costs, if there's no other separate assumption, a 3% inflationary increase has been assumed. Then the third bullet gets into the DWSD and GLEWA cost, or at least it starts out in terms of units purchased. So you can see from the first table there that over time, the usage of the city of Wayne, the volume of water you have purchased from DWSD and GLEWA has been in a fairly steady decline. Although it looks like it has slowed down, I'm curious to see where 2017 ends up to see if it continued to decrease or if it did hit rock bottom and bounce back, not anywhere near what it was in 2012, but at least stop the decline. That would be consistent with what we've seen in other Metro Detroit communities. So either in 2015 or 2016, every other community that I've worked in to do this sort of work, they hit rock bottom and then have come back. Some of that might be weather related. That's always part of the figuring, but it should, fingers crossed, it should have leveled out by now. Now, if we finish 2017 and we go, wait, it's still in a free fall, then the estimate that is built into the model should be changed. So right now, and we're not using a 5-year average because those early years are very high. We're just using the average of the last 2 years. So in 2015, you bought 720,000 units. In fiscal 16, you bought 713. So the average of those 2 years is 716, and that's what we're using every year going forward in the model. Now, not everything you buy gets sold. There's this concept of water loss. Our system is not watertight. There are other places in the city where water isn't necessarily metered. So if you have to flush a main, that water doesn't get charged to anybody. The city just eats the cost, or it's built into the rates. So over the last 5 years, on average, the water loss has been 6%. So we take 94% of the units sold, or excuse me, of the units purchased and assume that is what was sold or will be sold. Now, there's probably a little bit of cushion there that will help fix anything that we might have gotten wrong, because over the last 2 years, the water loss has been less than 6%. So there's a little wiggle room there that can help solve anything that we might have just missed the boat on. Another thing to mention is the very bottom paragraph on page 3. You have gone through the process of replacing all of your meters. And when other communities have done that, quite often what's discovered is we undercharge some of our customers. Not by any fault of our own, it's just that as water meters age, they slow down, they don't speed up. So an old meter will suggest that we charge our customers less than the water that they used. So it's up to the city, are we gonna back bill for that difference? Some communities do, some communities don't. But really, if you paid for this much water, but then you find out later you used this much water, it makes sense to back bill. That's only fair to the people in the system that paid for exactly what they used. On page 4, we continue. So that was talking about just the units bought, bought and sold. But the actual cost of the water from GLEWA is shown here on the top half of page 4. So like we mentioned before, it's a combination of a fixed monthly charge that they just bill us 12 equal payments and a variable rate. So that variable rate times the number of units that we purchased in any given month. That's where it gets a little bit tricky, because when DWSD and now GLEWA, when they publish your water rates went up X%, they're usually only talking about the commodity rate. In order to figure out the true cost increase, you have to compare 1 year to the next to say, if we bought the exact same number of units of water, how much would we pay last year and how much are we going to pay this year? And so when you do that, the percentage can be different. This last year, it was exactly the same. They raised the fixed and the variable the same rate. 3 years ago, it wasn't. It was a little bit of a game where they could say, we only raised your commodity rate by whatever the percentage was, but it actually was larger because of how that fixed charge increased. So if you look over the past 5 years, it's a little bit skewed because in 2016 there was that large increase. So, but then the prior 2 years were very low. 2014 and 15 were less than 3%. It's hard to say. Those 2 years were under Detroit. The most recent years are under Gliwa. What is it going to be going forward? We don't really know for sure. I mean, they have a revenue requirement. You've got things like Flint going out of the system, coming back into the system. You've got things like Highland Park hasn't paid their however many millions of dollars, and the rest of us are financing that. So it's hard to say in any given year what your rate increase is going to be. But for the purposes of the model, we've taken the average of the last 3 years, which is 12.3%. Potentially some cushion here as well, because these last 2 years have been 8.7 and 6.9. Now, when I say cushion, that doesn't mean we're overcharging, because we're not. This is a 5-year model that you're going to adjust every single year. So if there's some cushion, and I use that in quotation marks, cushion this year, it just means that your rate increase next year is going to be different. It'll constantly get adjusted as we look out over 5 years. So it's not an overcharging in the current year. It's just that we will require a lesser increase in a subsequent year. The target is always 5 years out. Cost of sewer has likewise been pretty volatile. For a couple of years, it actually did go down from the county. So we've taken the average of the last 5 years in total. So 2012 was big, and then 14 and 15 it goes down. But on average, we've assumed an increase of 4% a year. If it starts going up higher than that, obviously you're looking at it every year, and you can make an adjustment in the subsequent year. Top of page 5. So in addition to your fixed monthly charge, often also referred to as a readiness to serve, you also had a meter charge on your bill. And it was only a buck or two a bill. But usually the idea of the meter charge is you're taking that money and setting it aside and accumulating it so that you can pay for the meters when they eventually have to be replaced. That's really not what was done here. I mean, there was no accounting to calculate that. That money just went toward paying for operations. So our suggestion is just take that charge of a buck or two a bill, just take it off and get rid of it. We have calculated that rate, the rate the model is calculating excludes that. So if all the other assumptions held true, you'll be fine in year 5 without that money. So it's actually a little bit, when we talk later about what the actual increase is, it's actually a little bit less because you're taking away that meter charge. Okay. So then we get to the big reveal at the top of page 6. So presently, your water rate is $6.45, sewer is $6.35 for a total of $12.80. The suggested increase in fiscal 18 and every year forward throughout the model is an 8.1 increase in water and a 0.8% increase in sewer. Now, why that kind of disparity? Well, number one, if you recall from a minute ago, we said Gliwa, we were estimating 12.3%. We were only estimating 4% on sewer. That's part of it. Also, as I mentioned earlier, the water capital outlay is greater than the sewer capital outlay. So that's another factor. The third factor is you've never looked at this long term before. So you were adjusting rates on that given year based on what we thought costs would be. And so it's not always the best, it's definitely not the best way to do it, because you don't necessarily decrease your rates in years when you're looking at a 1 year at a time. You don't decrease your rates when you raise them so much the previous year. But by doing this spreading, we're looking at having a consistent rate increase so that you don't have this roller coaster effect on your customers, which causes chaos in the marketplace. So altogether, from this point forward till the end of the model, you're looking at a 4.5% increase per year. Now, this doesn't lock you in to doing it for the next 5 years. That's not what we're saying. We're saying the model says over 5 years, if every assumption holds true, we'll hit our target in year 5 with these rate increases. But you're going to look at this every year and revise it and get a new number. Now, what typically happens is, barring a giant sinkhole developing or some other catastrophic change that we can't possibly foresee, what will happen if you do this every single year is that rate increase will not change in any given year more than 1 or 2%. So one year it might be 3, the next year it might be 6, but it's not going to be 2 and 15. That's going to go away, barring one of those catastrophes. So over the course of time, the city will grow accustomed and expect that level of increase. So when we do this in other communities, what ends up happening after a couple of years is we present the findings of the model, council or the board passes it 7-0 with very little discussion, because we've talked year after year about all of these assumptions, and the model is very consistent, and what is predicted is pretty much is what ends up happening. And everyone has a good comfort level that the model's transparent, and that, well, if the model says we need a 4% this year and it was 3.5 last year, so be it, and everybody votes yay. And the customers tend not to complain either, because they've grown accustomed to it. So now that 4.5% doesn't affect everyone the same way, because it is partially commodity driven, or that this part is all commodity driven. We're not changing the fixed charge at all. So the more water you use, when you still have a fixed component, then the more you use, the rate increase is actually larger. So if you look at page 7, we have 2 example customers here. These are real customers of the city. We have a family of 2 and a family of 4. So the family of 2 in a given year uses 48 units or 48,000 gallons. And because they're using less water, their rate increase is only really 3.2% a year, not 4.5. The family of 4 using more water, using 82 units, their increase in year 1 is 3.6. So, well, where did the 4.5 go? The 4.5 is just on the commodity rate. That fixed component is still a significant portion of your bill, but that portion's not changing. So when you put it all together, you're really looking at a 3 to 4% increase per year that to a regular family of 2 or family of 4. If you're a higher level volume user, it would get closer to approaching that 4.5, but it would for the regular residential resident, this is what you're looking at, 3 to 4.
Mayor,
Yes.
I have a question. I was with you right until the end.
Okay.
And me not being the mathematician, how does the amount of money, or how is it the amount of water you use can affect, if we initiate a rate increase generally across the city, shouldn't that rate increase be the same for every person per unit?
Per unit, it is the same for everyone.
All right.
I'm looking at so let's say this is your fixed charge and this is your variable charge. If the variable charge goes up 4.5%, your total bill only went up 3%.
Okay.
But
now
if
I
this
understand.
goes up
Okay.
this much,
All right.
okay, based on your volume.
Yes, thank you. Just had to do that fist
Yeah.
thing.
You gotta get back to, it's 9th grade algebra. I have to map it out myself sometimes.
Thank you.
So then on the very last page, so this is an excerpt from the model. So there are tabs within the Excel file that support each of these boxes on this diagram. But this is the end result, where this is where the sausage gets made. All the other boxes flow into this, and it's a calculation that starts within that upper left corner. That's the cash you have in hand at July 1, 2016, $2.8 million. And then the circle on the far right bottom corner, or in the middle, 4.2, that's your target of where you want to be at the end of the 5-year model. So in any given year, you might actually lose some money, but at the end, you'll have gained enough to get to the end. Now, I know the model works. It's my own little check figure built in. is when that yellow box on the far right equals 0. So that's the difference between what our target is, and our target is those 3 buckets we talked about earlier. The difference between those buckets and then what is projected once you follow the flow of money in and out of the city for the next 5 years. So when you do all that, that's how you get to the 8% increase for water and the less than 1% increase for sewer. I know I just threw a lot of numbers at you, and it's hard to understand the calculation without playing a lot in the model, but the model does not translate well to printing or putting on a screen. You really have to be in it and work with it.
Right.
But what I always tell councils when I present this is, if you agreed with the methodology in terms of selecting the assumptions, and you believe that we're able to use Excel accurately, you put those numbers in, we work it through Excel, and what comes out has to be what, at least based on the assumptions, what the rate increase should be. So now you can argue that, well, you said 10%, I think it should be 8 or 9. We can do that all day, but it really doesn't change the end result very much at all.
Mayor,
Yes.
may I ask you some questions?
Oh, absolutely.
First of all, a few things here. First of all, you mentioned about dropping that $1 or $2 from future replacement. Is that my understanding, for meters in the
Yes.
future? What would we do in the future when we do need to replace it, not putting that money aside for that?
You finance it. Or pay cash, depending
Okay.
in that given
Out of
year.
the fund.
Out of the water and sewer fund, yep.
Okay. And then you mentioned there's potentially like 6% leakage throughout our whole water system. Is that basically a low fall number average for a community of our size? Or, I mean, is our system, we don't have a lot of problems.
Well,
We have a- we have-
that's a good observation and an excellent question, because you're right. That is a low number for a community of this age. So what that tells me is that when times were good, your DPW department was doing a lot of replacement work and was keeping up with all of the required changes and fixes and maintenance versus reconstruction. So that was something that the city was quite adept at for a long time.
And then my last question right now is that you referred to about the meter replacement and about the spike, or, with the levels that we were at in 2012 and how it has gradually decreased over the last several years. But now, some communities that you are working with as well are starting to see that going up. Were those same communities also had replacement meters, or is that also attributes to some other factors involved there as well as increased usage?
It's not a direct correlation between changing the meters.
Okay.
So
Fair enough.
as the economy went down the toilet, pun intended, as the economy worsened, people stopped using water. So you had industry leave, commercial places shut down or leave town, but at the same time, people stopped filling their pool or watering their lawn as much or washing their cars much. I hope they took the same amount of showers, I don't know, but people did use less water, and that was across the state.
One more question.
Yes.
Is that, is there certain thresholds of a community of how they're charged? Like, you're saying, the less we use, it's still costing us more. But then when we start using more, is there another threshold where, hey, listen, instead of using 10 gallons, you're using 20. Well, we're now going to charge you 2.8 cents per gallon. You get what I'm saying? Is that structured in any way?
There's so many moving pieces
Okay.
in how GLEWA charges communities.
Okay.
So, because your rates are different than your neighbor's rates based on your elevation and your distance
Okay.
and all that. There's really no way to say, like, if we do this, we're going to really help our rate. So some of the communities have started installing giant water tanks.
Yes.
I know Canton's planning on putting one in, and a couple other communities have talked about it at least. But that's one of the things where when you're the first to the party, you get the benefit. But as more people join the party, that benefit gets diluted. So if you were to jump on that and try to do it along with other communities, by the time you got done, there definitely wouldn't be the same return on investment as somebody that already has it. And you wouldn't get what you were expecting by the time it was all said and done. So there's nothing you can do. You're at the mercy of what Gleewood charges.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
I do remember that when Glee was here, they did, and I wish more residents had come to that meeting because it was quite intriguing. Because people think, because of all the decrease in usage, that hey, when times get tough, you use less, you get charged less. Well, Gleewood doesn't work that way because they still have all the infrastructure they have to pay for. So therefore, they have to pass on that cost to the fewer people using the system, so to speak. Whereas the system might have been, set up to service 4 million people in the metropolitan area. Now they're only whatever they're servicing. However, I know that we were doing this to get a 5-year plan, and I also know that there's other communities. Inkster, I think Westland's still ongoing. Inkster's already been settled, where there's been class action lawsuits. And I know what the city attorney says. There's always reason for litigation and that sort of stuff. And I know this helps with proving that we're doing the right thing. However, can you tell me, I know we're allowed to have a balance in the water fund. I know we're allowed to, for future costs, expected costs, and current costs. What are we allowed to charge to the water fund? I mean, you say dump trucks. How do we pass that off on the water fund?
Well,
Even though I know the DPW uses, and if they have to do, theoretically, if they have to do a water main and put dirt into, I guess theoretically you could almost fund an entire department off of
well,
the
if
water
the
fund.
major and local streets use those dump trucks, then they are paying rent on them.
Okay, back to the water fund.
Yeah.
Okay.
Schedule C rental rates. But to your first question of, how much are we allowed to? You're supposed to charge enough to operate your system. Part of operating your system is providing for debt service, routine maintenance, long-term capital replacement. So where some of these other communities have gotten into trouble, at least the one experience I have with this particular firm that's going after everyone was in Ferndale, where we came in, several years after some various changes had been made to the rates. The city couldn't support them. Like, we don't have a calculation. The prior finance director did it. All the records are gone. We don't know what she did, but these are the numbers. I'm like, oh, okay, well, so we can't prove it. All right. So then we got to work and we did one of these studies for them. And while we were doing that, they ended up settling the lawsuit because I believe that they had an okay amount of money. I don't think it was excessive, but they didn't want to pay legal fees and legal fees and legal fees and then maybe lose. So I was like, let's just cut our losses. We'll settle for a number that goes back to the residents and to the attorneys who took a third off the top. And then the very next year we had to raise the rates again because
So they're paying for their award.
they cut too deep on that settlement and now they have to recoup and refill their buckets. Now, the funny thing about that story is that the attorney, that law firm, when the city raised rates again, that he was all upset. It's like, we just got done with this. You cannot raise, like, look, I have a calculation. Let's sit down. And so myself and that attorney and the city attorney sat down in a room and we went through the Excel file in painstaking detail. And after about an hour and a half, he was fine. The city hasn't heard from him since. So the calculation going forward is solid. The calculation for the last 2 years that we did, I can defend. I wasn't here more than 3 years ago, so I can't say what happened before then. Based on the money you have in the bank, I don't think you have anything to worry about because it's certainly not excessive.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just have one question. You said this is fluid, it's a living document now. Who in our city is responsible for monitoring the maintenance and maintaining this document?
Well, we're going to turn it over to the finance department, so
Okay.
Katie will get this document. We will certainly do everything we can to teach and support. It should be done once a year through the budget process.
Okay.
So I would say, next February, once the budget starts being put together, it can be updated. So it's gone 50-50 with these other ones I do, where we either turn it over to the city and they're fine, or they get into it one year and go, you know what, we'd rather just give you guys, it's half the cost approximately of having it done in the first place. We'll just pay you the $7,000 or $8,000 and have you guys update it again. Either way's fine with me, whatever gives the city more comfort. But Katie's very adept and solid with Excel, and all it is Excel. It's just a matter of understanding how the model works.
Okay. Yes.
I got-
Councilman Racy,
I got a question for Brian through the chair.
into the microphone, please.
So we bought our own meters. So we own the meters. So we have a fixed cost. Is that fixed cost then GLEWA's money? I mean, we're fixing the cost for having the meter on water. Is that the city that does that?
The meters are yours, yes.
Right. So if we have a fixed cost, is that the city that does that, or is it GLEWA that has that fixed cost?
The fixed cost of the meter.
Well, for the water, we have a fixed cost for water.
The fixed cost, the charge that's on your bill as a customer.
Correct.
That charge is covering the administrative costs of the system, not the capital. So not replacing meters, not buying a dump truck.
So that is city or that's GLEWA?
It's the city's internal costs. The bills we get from GLEWA are 100% paid for by the commodity rate.
So if the city had water meters that they weren't using, they could shut them off and not charge themselves?
I wouldn't do that because it's normally referred to as a readiness to serve. So the idea is whether you choose to use a drop of water or a million drops of water, a million gallons of water, that's up to you, and you'll be charged on that sliding scale based on how much you use. But even if we shut off the meter, we're still going to read it to make sure that there's nothing to be charged. We still have a cost here within City Hall to administer the system. The guys still have to go out and work on your street. So there is a cost no matter how much you use or don't use. And that's what the readiness to serve charge is meant to cover.
Mm-hmm.
So just because somebody chooses not to use any water, or even if you've got, snowbirds, I would still charge that readiness to serve every month. Because regardless of what you use, if they want to turn on the faucet, it'll work.
But when it's the city, when it's the city or the DDA that owns that, and I guess I'll just explain what I'm trying to understand. So we have all sorts of water meters all over the downtown because we used to water flowers and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
And so now the DDA gets all these bills for all these water meters, and each one is this huge, it just adds up to this huge bill that we get nothing for out of the DDA. Is there any way that we can not have to do that so that that money stays in the downtown, and then we're able to spend it differently than that? Because we're not spending the money. We're spending the money.
So I want to make sure I understand, Councilman. So there are meters within the DDA,
Correct.
and the DDA does not receive a bill,
We do receive a
do.
bill,
okay.
and we pay this huge bill,
and the DDA pays for the
Because
the water usage.
which we don't turn on.
Well, you're paying the readiness to serve charge.
I understand that.
Yep.
But there's no way to combine these things because of how this thing is. So we just have there's just so many of them.
But if they
'Cause
want
it
to
used
use
to
the
be at
water,
the-
it's there.
Right. I'm just trying to figure out is there a way. It just seems like a shame when you have this huge bill, and it's not really doing anything, and because the water's never being turned on, and if we were to turn the water on, that's why we have all sorts of problems in the downtown because nothing's getting watered and everything's
So,
getting
but if
ruined.
you do that for the DDA, you have to do that for everybody else. 'Cause it wouldn't be fair
Right.
to the users across the system. And that's one of the things that could, in fact, create a situation where someone could challenge you under the Bolt decision.
Okay.
Because you have to treat everyone the same, and the cost of water it's not punitive, it's based on how much you choose
Right.
to use.
Right.
Madam Mayor?
Yes. Are you through, Councilman Racy?
I'm sorry.
I guess I got the other question, just to make sure I'm understanding. I think I've asked this before. So with the water rate, because of how it's gone down, they pick basically 1 or 2 times a year where they measure how much water usage you have, correct? And so
Feed day.
we're basically, you're basically putting it in, you're gambling. This is what we think we're going to use, and that's how the rate gets determined, and that's why we get that kind of the rate that we do. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Councilman Sanders.
That was a good point that Councilman Racy brought up. But question, just along with, I know we've reached that. You bring up a good point as well, saying, hey, then you'd have to do it for the snowbirds. You'd have to do it for, whatever. But along with that question, that if we were to have shut down, say the DDA water, not water mains, the meters, thank you, then to recoup that cost, because we're from what my impression when I sat on that side of the dais, that the reason why we went to fixed costs is so therefore we'd have a guaranteed certain, if people went down on their water, the usage of their water, we'd have a certain guarantee of how much money were coming in, so therefore we could know that we could pay our bills.
Correct.
And so therefore, if we did that in the DDA, then we'd essentially have to sort of bill the rest of the people that are using it for the difference to cover that cost that we're losing there, correct?
Yeah, so if the DDA doesn't want to use water anymore, take out the meter, cap the line, and they don't have access to it anymore. If they don't have access, then don't charge them anything. But as long as they have the ability to turn on the faucet, they should be paying the readiness to serve charge.
Okay. Well, then too, they have to do the routine maintenance and such and check the lines anyway
Right.
to make sure that they are ready to be used.
Madam
All
Mayor.
right. Yes.
To Councilman Sanders' point, if we did cap off the DDA, then that would increase the rates of residents for the fixed costs to cover up the difference being lost, correct?
Yeah, then the next time through, then we would reduce the number of meters, because we have this whole calculation to figure out. And, if a 1-inch meter pays different than a 2-inch meter and so on. So, yeah, then the following year, we would just change that calculation to take out the number of meters. I don't know what the DDA pays in a year or what size their meters are. But pulling out, one customer isn't going to have a significant impact on the rates.
Okay.
If it was Ford, yeah, but I don't think anybody else.
How many
Okay,
different,
yes.
if you don't mind,
Yes.
how many different meters does the DDA have? Do we know?
Like 10, maybe?
I think there's about 10 bills that we get
All right,
to
thank
pay
you.
every,
Thank you.
bi-monthly.
Thank you.
Estimate.
Yeah.
Guesstimate.
Any other questions of council members?
There's someone out here.
Are there questions? Yes, in the audience?
My question is concerning the dollar or the $2 that you say it would drop off in a year or so. Are those the dollars that were added to the bills to pay for the new water meters so we could pay cash? And if so, why couldn't we remain on that charge to pay for those 2 new dump trucks or for the new vacuum truck that desperately needs to be paid
Earlier.
for? So we don't have to take out a loan and incur interest or whatever in the future.
Well, so the dump trucks and any of the other capital that we talked about is baked into the calculation so that the city will be paying cash. There is no additional financing for the duration of the model. Now, if you wish to keep that charge, change the name because it's not a meter charge anymore.
Right.
It's a capital replacement, whatever. And you're allowed to save money for future cap. That's that fourth bucket that I'm talking about.
Right.
So if you were to do that, we'd figure out how much money that was gonna be for the, so let's say it raised like 40,000. At the end of year 1, our target is 40,000. The end of year 2, it's 80,000 until we plan to buy something from it.
Correct.
And so that would just be the fourth bucket on here.
Right, and that's what we did with the water meter system, from what I understand.
Well, the money was generated, but it wasn't set aside and saved.
Okay. Thank you.
But
Okay.
I guess I have a
Yes,
question then.
yes.
In response to that, so even if we didn't have that two extra dollars on there, the amount that you're suggesting in your plan, in your 5-year plan, gets us to there were to buy that truck without financing anyways, and so therefore we're lowering the cost. But at the same time, we're getting to the point where we're saving enough to buy that without financing, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Hammond? If you could, please.
I'm sorry.
I think we're being taped, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yes,
Say my name again.
please.
Dan Hammond, Hillcrest, Open Meetings Act. Madam Mayor, members of the council. First of all, I'd like to thank Brian. When I talked about how I sat with him, I wasn't aware that he had switched it from it to being a direct recovery of the fixed cost recovery that was originally DWSD and then GLEWA.
Okay.
So he explained that to me, and when we walked out in the hallway, Mr. Miller, 6% water loss is a very low number. Most communities in southeast Michigan are between 15 and 20%. We did have a 10-year program, and the other thing I wanted to point out is when you're talking about the meter charge, it is based on size, so people with big meters pay more. But the new meters that were just installed, 1.7 million, I believe, of the dollars came from those bonds that were sold for capital improvement, and there was a 10th phase that was never completed, and that money was just sitting there because it wasn't enough to do the rest of the project, and it was decided to then use that money to partially offset the cost of new meters, which they were also in dire need of replacement. So as far as Brian is speaking, yeah, you could keep the meter charge because they should be replaced probably every 20 years. We went far beyond that. Not super far, but like maybe 30 years. But you could accumulate some money to pay for the next generation of meters. The newer meters with the newer reading systems actually have a shorter lifespan than those old-fashioned brass ones where you plugged in and read the meter on the outside of the house. Westland has already done 2 meter changes in the last probably 8 or somewhere around 12 years. They've changed twice because their first system failed fairly rapidly. And the more complex it becomes with the reading, cell towers versus antennas and all these things, it may not last as long as the last one did.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from council? Yes,
Just
Councilman Sanders.
Yeah, just curiosity. I have a question. So we get this money from GLEWA, right? And I guess
charge from GLEWA.
not that it has, huh?
We get a charge from GLEWA.
Right, I know. All right, but we still get the water from there too, right? Right. So I guess it's just more of it has nothing to do with the budget, but it has everything to do with, so the water comes from the clean source and it comes through the pipes and stuff. At what point where are they gauging how much water we're using? Can't be each person that turns on the tap. It's got to be like a meter somewhere that as you enter the city of Wayne, right? I mean,
Is it 1 or 2 masters?
You have one master meter at Merriman
Yeah.
and Michigan Avenue. There's a pump station there. There's also a water tank. There used to be 2 on the other side of Merriman Road. Now, the way it's configured right now is the water comes in through the master meter, and then it leaves our city to Westland in several locations, Romulus and 2. There's a tap to Inkster that barely gets any water that goes through it. But there's like 7 deduction meters, and that water is deducted and subtracted from the city's gross water metered,
okay.
because that water is ultimately going to different cities. There is a proposal to reconfigure that meter, but the reason they can't change it right now is because the water passes through the meter, and it can either go into the city of Wayne system or into that water tank and then be released later. So they can't distinguish which water goes into that tank, which water comes into the Wayne system without subtracting what actually leaves the city of Wayne, not used by Wayne customers.
Thank you. Sorry. I'm good.
I do understand. I did have a meeting with GLEWA, 2 meetings downtown, and they did tell me that the meter that is at Merriman Road in Michigan they're looking at replacing, because at some times it's reading that no water is being used in the city of Wayne.
Because sometimes no water is being used. It's being fed by that water. from
Water
the
tank, okay, okay, thank you. Are we through with questions on the water? Yes, okay. Oh, no, that's
Okay,
okay.
thank you. I just wanted to have, I know that we went through the budget a week ago, it's already been passed, but there was a lot of questions that were coming in from residents with regards to understanding the budget a little bit more. And I thought it would be a good idea just to have Katie talk and with Brian's assistance, just kind of break it down just briefly, just with regards to, you know, why we are looking at a deficit, some of the things that we've done, and really where our pension costs are at, and just kind of make sure the public's aware, and if there was anything that wasn't clear to the council too. So I appreciate the time for this.
My only question is, we show that we're going to the RAP program
Well,
next.
as I said earlier, I had said that
Okay.
he tied the budget and utility
Okay.
onto one, and
Okay.
so the agenda kind of got thrown
Okay.
backwards.
All right.
So this all runs together.
Okay.
So, thank you.
This first slide, showing the general fund of the revenues and expenditures.
You want the budget one?
It shows that we've been consistent in our revenue and expenditures. In 2016, you'll see they're around the same, and that's because we were using the OPEC trust to cover some of the expenses. And then in 17, you'll see how those funds were used up, and then our expenses are up higher now because of the healthcare and pension increases. The next slide shows our general fund balance and the upcoming deficit. For the 2015, the bottom part shows the general part, the general fund, the blue, and above that's the OPED money. And then you'll see in 16 how the OPED is being depleted, and then 17 it is gone, and we just have some general fund, and we're projecting 18 to be a deficit.
Empty pockets guy.
This slide is the unfunded legacy costs. For 2015, it's showing that our net pension liability is 37K. Oh, 37 million.
Yes.
Yeah. And then our post-employment benefits is 44 million. In 2016, it's up to 50 million and 85 million. And in 17, we're expecting the pension liability to grow, but we are expecting the post-employment benefits to reduce because of the stipend.
Yeah, so the reason why I say may grow on pension is because that's a net number. So how much money have we put away and how much do we owe? So the how much have we put away is heavily dependent on the investment activity at MERS. So one of the reasons why the net pension liability has grown over the years is because the investment returns have not been as much as what they calculated and estimated. So for years, they were using an estimated rate of return of 8%. They've since dropped that a quarter point. But if that doesn't happen, I mean, they know how much we're going to pay. They know who the retirees are. They know what the cost of living adjustment is. So they know what they're going to pay. It's just a question of how much money do we actually have in the bank at MERS. So it will more than likely increase somewhat. But the OPEB money, it should be a very dramatic decrease. So if you recall from the audit presentation, the difference between 2015 and 2016 was that in the 2015 number, which is actually based on the 2014 valuation, the actuary was including a rate of return, assuming that the city would continue to put money into the OPEB trust, not take it out. So in the 16 valuation, the assumption, the actuarial assumptions changed. So now it's like, well, we know how much is in there and it's all coming out. Nothing more is going in. And so that OPEB liability doubled because of that change in the assumptions. Now, that liability in prior years includes an assumption that the cost of the benefit is going to keep going up, 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 up. But by adopting the stipend, the actuary can assume we know exactly how much we're going to pay because it's a dollar amount times the number of employees, and they can just run that out through the estimated life of those people. And so that number over time, if it's cut off from new people joining, then that number over time will get smaller and smaller over the next 50 years. But we would expect to see a very dramatic decrease in that number, and the city needs to get evaluation done ASAP because there is a new GASB standard related to post-employment benefits, similar to that of what happened to the pension a couple years ago, GASB 68. Well, OPEB's catching up to that. So bottom line, the unfunded legacy costs per head, per person, per capita should decline a pretty good number. What that is, I don't know yet. We'll see.
Okay, not good. Okay, any questions from members of the council regarding this?
I do, and I'm trying to explain this one here. It says, okay, we went renegotiated all these contracts, okay? So we got new pension plans for these future or current employees, okay? So now, when they complete the life of their work life and start receiving those pensions, how much less will they be then, or how much less will they be in the future?
How much less will they get paid because of the lower
Yes.
multiplier?
Yes.
I don't have that number. The city still has to get full valuations once all of the contracts are settled. It should be significant, and I would hope that that decrease would more than offset anything that MERS might get wrong on its investment rate of return
Okay.
estimate.
And then I'm asking is, where are we going to finally, are we going to start seeing where our pension costs are going to, how can I say, peak out at by, say, 2030 or 2025, 2030, 2040? Do you know what I'm saying? I'm saying when these people pass away and all these old grandfathered in costs, and they finally pass on, and then it just, it'll take that drop. I mean, there's a way of calculating that, how long these people live. I mean, insurance companies do it every day. They figure it out,
Yeah, your actuary does also.
And so, is there like in the future, is it like by 2030 we're looking at, or?
I don't have that information.
Okay, I'm just curious. What's the picture gonna look like in the pension side, or when is it going to really significantly finally peaked out, start going down, I know we made a lot of efforts in that way.
Explain a little bit about an actuarial.
Oh, sure.
might help to-
Yeah, so I'll give you a brief synopsis of what an actuary does. So, like what we did with the water and sewer, they build a model. And they have actuarial tables and guesstimate that everyone's going to live for so long based on national averages and blah, blah, blah. And then they have these long-term rates of return, and they factor in the pension costs and when people are going to fall off through natural causes. And so they have a very complicated model, the math that I cannot follow because I'm not an actuary. But it's very similar. It's built on assumptions. So people continue to live longer, which is actually part of the reason why some of the actuarial valuations performed in other cities spiked recently, was because they were using some old estimated life tables. They were using the life expectancy tables from 1994, which doesn't seem like that long ago, but people live several years or many years longer now than they did 22 years ago, 23 years ago. So the longer people live, the higher our liability is. And as someone that still has 2 grandparents walking around, I hope they all live forever, but there's certainly an impact on the cost.
Gotcha, thank you.
Any other?
That's what I was asking about.
Yeah.
Is there some sort of a model that, where's the light at the end of the tunnel for this city in particular when it comes to pensions and what we've tried to accomplish and achieve and being able to, that's all I was asking.
Any other questions? Any questions? No? Okay, we can move on. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Katie. Yep.
So the RAP program is the Water Residential Assistance Program that Wayne Metro has. The RAP's mission is to administer the distribution of RAP funding to eligible low-income customers of the Great Lakes Water Authority with the vision to create a transformative water utility assistance program focusing on bill assistance, conservation, and self-sufficiency initiatives. So residents that would qualify for this program would need to be at or below 150% of the poverty line. They would need to have proof of residency and proof of income. If they're a renter, then they would need to have proof in their lease agreement that they're responsible for the water. And they would need to stay current on their monthly bill payment to remain eligible for the program. I looked at some census data and other facts and saw that 22% of people in Wayne would fall under the persons of poverty. Our residential accounts total 5,384. And when talking to Wayne Metro, they told me that a city of this size, we'd probably have about 10 to 25 enrollees. The RAP program's requirements for the city that are being reviewed by legal would be that we would freeze arrearages for 12 months or until the resident exits the program. We would waive penalties for program participants. We would stop any pending shutoffs once a resident has an appointment with Wayne Metro, and we would exempt them from tax rolls. If the program is approved by City Council, and after the agreement has been reviewed by the city attorney, we can choose the start date that we would like, and then residents can contact Wayne Metro for an appointment to see if they qualify. The program benefits for residents that qualify would be assistance up to $300 per household per year. It's a $25 monthly bill credit, so since we bill every other month, it would be a 50 credit. They also have a home water audit for households that use above 120% of the average usage. If they have a home audit, then any repairs that need to be done, up to $1,000 for minor repairs, would be used with the RAP funding. They also have water saving kits and consumer training classes, as well as other services that residents may qualify. This next slide shows what 150% of the poverty income would look like. And this is the Wayne Metro website if you'd like more information.
Katie, have you already submitted the contract to the attorney's office for review?
Yes.
You have, okay. So once we get that back, then we can put it on the agenda for the council to consider?
Yes.
Okay. Any questions? Any other questions?
Mayor,
Yes.
I do. I just want to clarify, 150%, is that below the poverty line?
Yeah.
Okay, wow. And then that means, is that 5,300, a little over 5,300 households or individuals?
Households.
Households, okay. And roughly how many households do you know of that we have in Wayne? I don't know. Do you happen to know? How many households?
That's it,
The
right?
5,384 is how many residential bills we send out.
Oh, okay. Oh, we don't know how many would qualify for this. Currently,
No.
24 participants are in the program right now. Okay, I'm sorry, thank you.
No, she said up to 25, 10 to 25
Oh,
could
10
be.
10 to 25
Are-
is what they said for a city our size.
Okay.
They have seen how many people enrolled, but it's really up to how many people contact them and make appointments.
okay,
It could
thank
be
you.
more.
Thank you.
But for clarification on
Yes.
that, it's 23% of the 5,300 that are in our city that are below the poverty. Well, according to 150%, right?
The 22.8% is census data, so that's just overall of the population.
Okay. So in essence, just shy of 23% of the households would qualify for this program.
They could.
Okay. Any other questions for Katie? No? Okay. Thank you, Katie.
Yep.
And we move on to the vendor. Yes.
Just for clarification, I was glad I'm glad she's on board. One of the tasks that was given to the administration was to look at vendor lists and vendor options and qualified vendors for the city. As you know, we have how many pages was it, Mayor, the document? 400, okay, thank you, Mayor Pro
I
Tem.
remember that well.
Yes.
Oh, you do. But it's not really a vendor's list, that's just all of the vendors that we've paid. And so that's not really technically anything that we
It's
can go
current,
by.
yeah.
So what we thought about is Katie came up with some good ideas, so I gave her the task when she was hired, and she jumped right on it, so she's gonna present her findings to you and request your feedback, so, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so the goal of our qualified vendor list proposal is that the city could have a list as a resource for contacting prospective vendors. We would have vendors complete an application and submit their W-9 to join the qualified vendors list. If applicable, they would also submit a professional license and liability insurance certificate. Registration would be valid for the city's fiscal year of July 1st through June 30th. Vendors would renew their registration annually to remain a qualified vendor, which would keep our list up to date. My recommended fee structure would be for corporations and partnerships to pay a $50 initial registration fee and then $25 renewal fee for years after that. And for individuals, it would be $20 initial registration fee and $10 renewals after that. For current vendors that register at the start of this, we would give them a 50% discount off the initial registration fee. After the program starts, any late renewals, we would charge a $5 late fee. Some benefits of becoming a qualified vendor is the vendors that register would receive email requests for bids for opportunities of the categories that they're in. Registration fees are more affordable to vendors than if the city utilized other qualified vendor lists, such as the Michigan Intergovernmental Trade Network, which charges $89.95 a year. Vendors would be listed on the City of Weymouth's website as a qualified vendor, And vendors would receive a website badge indicating that they are a qualified vendor for the city of Wayne. Any questions?
Yes, my first question is, the renewals. You know, we are so short-staffed, and we already have people in the clerk's office and finance. Everybody's doing 2 and 3 jobs. How is this going to be administered? I mean, who's going to take on doing the necessary, paperwork, the forms, and then every year, what if they, what happens if they come into the city in, let's say, February of next year? And then they're already up for renewal July 1?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
there would be no break, so they would be charged the $50 in February, and then they'd have to pay the $25 renewal fee in July, correct?
In the suggestion right now, yes.
Yes, okay. All right. And then my other question is, these vendors would be vendors that the city itself would be using? Okay. Would we also, now the $89.95 and the $149 for 2 years with the Michigan Intergovernmental Trade Network, is that what we pay to belong to it? But sometimes I think they probably have a much broader group to pull from than just what ours would be. Would that not be true?
That's true, but I think what we're trying to accomplish here, Mayor, and that's a very
Right.
good point. I'm a member of Minton with my own company, and actually, I only do it just to be registered, to be somebody that they would recommend, but I find it to be a waste of money on my end, because of the fact that there's so much stuff in there, there's so many things.
Mhm.
Now, it has worked for some time. The city itself could certainly, stay on Minton and not do this, but we were looking at ways to create a better qualified vendor list for this community, because I know there was some discord about that.
Mhm.
And then also trying to generate some revenue as well,
Right.
because all that revenue is going to Minton right now. But good questions, though.
Does the city pay Minton?
Yes.
Yes.
Through the chair, please. Okay. Okay. All right. Well, this is something, the qualified vendors list, if everybody could at least take that, think about it, and then if you want it on the next council meeting agenda, if you could let either the city clerk's office or the city manager's office know that you'd like it on the next agenda for possible inaction. But I think that's a very good idea. Thank you for all the hard work on it. Appreciate it. Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for getting this together so quickly. It's something that has been a hot topic item, so I just wanted to say thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
I have a question as well.
Yeah,
Madam
oh.
Mayor.
Qualified vendor list, does that comport with the city charter?
They would still have to have bids. They would still have to go through a bidding process.
The city the charter specifies that it's to be awarded to the lowest qualified bidder. So you're pre-qualifying them and making them pay for the right to become pre-qualified? It technically. the
No,
charter-
no, all we're doing is putting them so that people, the city administration will have a list of people that have already gone through and are members of this, but that does not eliminate anybody else from applying and putting in a bid when we go out for bids. It doesn't just have to be the qualified,
You don't have to be pre-qualified to bid.
right, no,
Because really, the charter vests all purchases.
right.
in the city manager.
Right, no, because if I would suggest that we would stay in the Mitten.
I'm not talking
Yeah,
about Minton at all.
right.
I'm just suggesting that the city charter already says that the power to purchase and sell property, it rests with the
Right.
city manager.
Right,
And if she wants a pre-qualified list, that's when, she can do that as part of her process. But it's not really a council action to take, in my opinion. It's already covered by the charter, and the power is vested in the city manager.
but because we're setting fees, that's where we come in. We have to give the approval to set the fees.
So,
You
yeah.
don't have to pay the fee and become pre-qualified in order to bid.
No, I don't think you would have to, no. I mean, that's, you would be preferred, you would at least know you've already gone through some type of a process. But no, I would not say that that would eliminate you from bidding on a job.
Before we do anything,
Clarify.
Yeah.
gonna run this through legal.
Yeah, would have to go through,
Absolutely, good question.
yeah. Any other, yes, Mr. Amos?
If I'm not mistaken, she didn't answer who's going to administrate or take care of the paperwork and funding part of it.
The finance department will be administering it.
Thank you.
Any, yes, yes.
So you have to pay money to be on this list. Would that comport with the affirmative action, that I've got to, if I want to do business with the city, I have to pay money? Or I have to keep my eyes open and take a look at the, Westland Observer to see if there's an open bid? Other than that, I might lose out because I'm not on this, this list here that people have to pay for.
Okay, that's a good question. We can look into that and check with the attorney. Okay?
Affirmative action.
Mm-hmm, okay.
I shouldn't have to pay for that to be doing
Okay.
business.
Okay.
If it's, like Mr. Hammond just said.
Okay.
But
Yes,
you have
yeah.
to, with the whole, with the state and with others, you have to be on a vendor's list to be able to acquire work.
We don't hear.
That's what we,
Three meetings ago, we had problems of, and everybody's talking about vendors.
that's why we're here.
That's why we're here.
Yes, sir.
That's why we're here, and that's, you came up with a dollar figure to
Yep.
be on a vendor's.
Councilman Gabriel, you had a question?
Yeah, through the chair.
Yes.
In regards to the renewal fees, it shows that the initial is, say, for corporations 50, then 25, individuals 20 and 10. But then there would be a 50% discount off of the initial registration fee for early registration. Isn't the renewal fee already 50% of the initial?
Yeah, I wanted to keep the price low for current vendors that are already doing business with the city to be able to register and not pay the 50 and the 20, but more for down the road, new people being added to the list, paying the initial fees.
So whether you basically register early or towards the tail end of the registration period, it is 50%.
For initial registrations, it would be 50 or 20, and for renewals, it would be 25 or 10. But if we start this, when we start this, the current vendors would get the 50% discount to register.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Not at this time.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay,
Victor?
we have vendors that do a lot of grass cutting. Some of them don't live up to their expected work. We've seen that in 5 years, and just this year, too. And so, for the DPW to monitor with such our low staff, to see how well they're doing this experienced job of lawn service, or it should be brine taking of a road, who's out there administering, and we've already paid the money by these professional service agreements. These people are on these vendors list, and you say, oh yeah, we'll take that one. What if it happens if there's a citizen that says, I got a complaint about that, and we'll call it a complaint to vendor list, okay? Such a word, complaint to vendor list, saying that, hey, this person who's supposed to be plowing the roads only does half of the roads. Okay, so who's gonna receive the complaints and follow up to make sure that those people are in fact the best vendors that you have? Okay?
If it would go the same as it does now, you would call DPW if it has something to do with roads and such.
But they're taxed, they don't have enough staff. We've talked about this.
They do it already. They do it already, and when we have contracts coming to us, Mr. Queen already tells us if it's been satisfactory performance in the prior year.
Okay, so if they happen to be on that list though, and Mr. Queen misses a meeting,
Mm-hmm.
and they're on that list, who's gonna remove them from that list?
That's a question we can have, that needs to be answered, how they stay on. Right.
You don't show up for meetings,
Yeah.
you get taken off the list, you don't do a satisfactory job, there should be
Right.
some mechanism.
I agree.
How do you extract people off that list?
I agree.
Give them a discount, give them their $5 back.
Good questions, yes.
Mayor, may I ask Ms. Sample a question here?
Yes.
Is the majority of our bids, that come, or are needed from the city, basically focused on snow removal, lawn cutting and printing, or is it much wider than that, right? I mean, I know it is, but the majority of the bids, are they focused in those areas?
Engineering, you have all types of things.
Okay, there's no disproportional, there,
No, not real printing.
okay.
We talked about printing, we talked about, there's a lot of different options. I mean, if you go through the vendors list, you'll see a lot of different things. Our vehicles getting fixed, if, there's something, or parts, ordering parts. Also like the vendors, with vendors, we had to hire somebody to sell the fire truck. I mean, it just can be random on different things that can come up.
I just get a lot of feedback just with grass cutting, okay? And we kind of make these these contracts where it's a large scope of properties to be combined together. And I'm just wondering, and I hear some businesses, lawn cutting services that, say, wish they could have a piece of that pie there, okay? But, for some reason, they're not able to. I'm wondering, maybe it would be beneficial of breaking up some of those parcels and diversify some of those grass cuttings to different group companies. It's a thought.
Are you saying because sometimes the job's too big for a smaller company?
Possibly, and maybe we'd get more effective service done. Maybe we can get a little bit better pricing done. Maybe we can do something different there. We don't know unless we try. But I do get that a lot from lawn services.
Thank you.
I wish, how can I get, a bid from the city with lawn service? What's going on?
They need to apply.
They may not be qualified, they may
Yeah.
not be certified.
And I don't know the answers
Yeah.
to all that.
Yeah.
Different things, sure.
And I understand that.
That's something I can bring up to the
But I understand about the other contracts we made, but that one in particular, for some of the scope of the parcels that we have to cut, maybe we can kind of break it up a little bit. Maybe give everybody a little piece of the pie, and then see maybe a little competition there, and who can provide the best service, and develop that kind of a level of service in the future for future bidding projects.
I'll bring it up to the team, that's a good suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No? Any questions here? No? Okay. Citizens' comments or requests on items that were not on this agenda? Are there any? No? Okay. Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Support.
Been motioned by Councilman Sutton and supported by Councilman Sanders. All in favor?
Aye.
9:15. Thank you.